Hey, what's going on, you guys? Simchal Fitness here, and today I would like to talk about a topic that is very controversial in subject matter. The subject of gay people and how I feel about gays, LGBT, and some of my thoughts and perspectives on them. I made a video a while back, pointing a camera up at my face, and I was leaning back in a chair, and somebody commented that it was no more coherent than drunken rambling. Well, hopefully today I'm gonna sit here tall before you guys, right, with coherent thoughts and messages, and I'm going to do my very best to try to convey my opinions and my stances on these subjects. This video is not meant to insult anybody. It's not meant to hurt anybody or offend someone. It is simply meant to help young men specifically who may be experiencing trouble in figuring out who they are, what their identity is, and what their place is in this world with regard to a myriad of subject matters. Now, obviously, that leaves a lot of ground to cover, and I'm going to try to get to all of it as best as I possibly can. I didn't write anything for this video because I felt that this sort of video requires that I sort of go off the cuff, so to speak, because it allows for mental exploration into these various topics as I go, versus being to a script where I think is a little bit more confined and a little bit more like I'm trying to write a thesis paper, which this is not. I'm not trying to write a literary essay. I'm not trying to write some type of speech. I'm just trying to convey some fundamental ideas that I think could help a lot of both young men and young girls really find themselves and figure out who they are and what they want to do. Okay, now with all the preliminaries out of the way, let's get right down to it. Okay, first thing you need to understand about gay people, or being gay, is that being gay is in fact a choice. Now, what I mean by this is, obviously, the people who are gay really are gay. They really do have feelings for the person of the same sex. But everybody, to some extent, has feelings for the same sex. Now, whether people admit it or not, or whether people act on that or not, is, in fact, the focal point in which gay people and straight people need to make that call. And the reason you can know this is true is because as more as the 1950s and 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s and now 200s and beyond have occurred, there's been more and more gay people coming forward and coming out of the closet, so to speak, claiming that they are gay. Simply because it's more available, because it's more popular, because it's more normal and standard and socially acceptable. But the reason why the social acceptability makes it that these people are thereby empowered with the ability to make the decision of acting upon their same-sex attractions. For example, I'm a straight man, but if I were to see a man with cut-off sleeves, particularly one that might have a muscular definition, I might look at that man and appreciate him for his aesthetic physique. Now, that doesn't mean I'm gay, but in a paradoxical universe, right, it would be that had I not have my fundamental ideologies intact, I might go ahead and pursue that man if I thought that it was best for me. Do you see how this sort of thing would play out without the level of understanding that you do indeed have a choice based off of who you interact with? Based off of your decision on the subject matter. And you can go to any man, right, who's straight or gay, or we're talking about straight men in this case, and you can say, you mean to tell me you've never felt anything for any other man in your life to any degree whatsoever? And that guy's going to tell you, if he's an honest fella, is going to say, well, actually, I have felt a certain way about a certain man before, but obviously that doesn't mean anything. I'm not going to go out there and act on it. Very similar to if I saw an old grandma crossing the road with a handbag who I happen to know has a lot of money inside. I know I can snatch that purse and run away from her before the cops or any bystanders or she could possibly catch me. I'm pretty strong. I could probably get away pretty easily. But I know I'm not going to do it because I know it's not the right thing. So, therefore, I don't act on that thought. The same thing with being gay. The same thing with being the same-sex attraction. Just because you have an attraction towards something doesn't mean you have to act on that certain thing. Now, it's very important to make this distinction because this is the very first step in understanding why the fundamentals about being gay. And it's all rooted in the fact that being gay has a bell curve. Not a bell curve, excuse me. A slope that has been gradually increasing, like I said, as we reach 2020. And it's because it's becoming more and more socially acceptable, thus more and more accessible in the minds of the general public. See, the public has a larger mindset. There's a public mindset, and within that public mindset, much of that public mindset is taken up by the subject of homosexuality. And therefore, that thought is more accessible now than ever. And that's mostly due to the internet and due to social media. But once you have that thought in people's head, they have the ability to now go ahead and make a choice. Sort of like if I were to present you with two marbles. You have a blue marble and you have a red marble. Okay? And if I were to present you with a choice and I would only give you the red marble, well, you're going to take the red marble because that's the only marble you can take. But if I were to give you a choice, you can have the red marble or you can have the blue marble. You will choose either or because you have a choice in choosing either or. You're saying, well, I did like the red marble, but you know what? Now that the blue marble's there, maybe I will take the blue marble because it's in front of me. It's here. That's sort of the same thing about having that choice to become gay. And I guarantee you, like I'll go back to my first point, I guarantee you that every straight man, and I do mean even the Pope himself, has at least once in his life looked at another man and thought to himself, that is a good looking man. It's just human nature. Well, that's the way we're built. We're attraction, we're sexual attractive machines. That's our makeup. We look and we are attracted to people, and in some ways we're attracted to people not in a sexual way, but we're attracted to them maybe for their money, their power, their influence. There's lots of men that I look at that I admire. Does that mean I'm sexually attracted to them? Absolutely not. I have a certain feeling for that man in a way that has to do with emotions, meaning I admire and respect that person for their accomplishments. So at what point is there a gray area? That's another point. At what point is there a gray area between admiring somebody of the same sex and actually having lustful feelings for that person of the same sex? That all brings it back full circle and showing you that it really is up to the person to understand the divide at what point, and understand that every single man has had a feeling for another man. It just, the separation comes in which men have the opportunity, or rather which men choose to act on those on those whims and those feelings. So that's one huge thing. And I pretty much just spent 10 minutes just discussing the same subject. the same point even. It's not even a subject. It's just a point within the subject. But once you have that point, you're armed to accept the rest of sort of what needs to be said. That is the basis for the number one argument for why being gay is the wrong choice, which is going to be the title of this video. What you need to understand once you accepted that, or at least once you've entertained that subject, you need to realize that once it is a choice, you need to ask yourself why it would be the wrong choice. Okay, I understand, Simca. You've convinced me that being gay is a choice, and I choose to be gay. Thank you very much. I will go on my way now. But wait, there's more. Now that we've established that it is a choice to be gay, we have to establish a number of points to bring about the subject matter of what is a good choice in this context and what isn't. Let me explain. When we grow up as young adults and as children, as kids, upon graduating through the grades, let's say you start off at 10 years old, you start learning a little bit about yourself. I'd say you start having a sense of self-awareness at around 10 years old. Thereby, sometime around 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, you start finding yourself. You start at least trying to find yourself. And hopefully, sometime between the ages of about 15 and 25, in that 10-year span, you will have found yourself. Part of that journey in finding yourself is learning about yourself, learning who you are. And by learning who you are, it means learning who you are on the inside as well on the outside. Learning your strengths, learning your weaknesses, learning what you're good at, learning what you're bad at, learning what you like, learning what you dislike. These are all really, really important if you ever want to develop a sense of, here's the magic word, social, I screwed it up. If you want to remember the word of self-identity, that's the magic word here, self-identity. If you want to construct yourself a matter of self-identity, all right, that magic word, you need to understand these things, the things I just listed. It's really important to understand these things. And furthermore than that, it's important to accept who you are as a person. So for example, if you say, if you're born, say, with a certain disability, for example. Let's say you're born with dyslexia. You can't read. And whenever you read, all them words come up backwards. It's your job in your seeking, in your quest for a self-identity to accept that about yourself. Just because you have a form of disability known as dyslexia doesn't mean that you're no good, and it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you. And that's really important. And it's also really important to accept the good qualities about you. For example, if you're good at soccer, then accept the fact that you're good at soccer because you're good at soccer. And there's nothing to be ashamed of because that's who you are. And nobody ever has the right to be ashamed of who they are. Now, in today's context, today's day and age is so twisted that this notion of not being ashamed of who you are has actually been twisted on its head and used to promulgate the actual LGBT community. You see, now they say, don't be afraid of who you are, because inside yourself, you're really this raging homosexual. Which can't be farther from the truth. And I'm going to refrain from using the word raging because that might be a little bit offensive to the construction of this very serious talk. And I'm not trying to insult anybody. But the fact of the matter is that you need to establish some ground rules in seeking out your self-identity. Because if you don't, then you're going to wander aimlessly. which is why you have so many people, part of the LGBT community, that claim to have found their identity. They like gender identity, and they have the words called sexual identity, and they have all these words of identity, but the ultimate irony is they have no identity. And their lack of identity is their biggest weakness. The biggest weakness of the gay community is the lack of identity. And the identity is the most important thing a person can have. This self-identity that I spoke of before. That's such a magical term. It is important because once you know who you are, you can then go ahead and become something. That's why it's so important. Because once you know who you are inside, you can take that and use that to apply it to things. For example, to take me for example, I work hard. I'm a hard worker. I like doing manual labor. So thus I became a trucker who does a lot of hauling. And I drive a lot of vehicles and I haul a lot of stuff. And that's who I am. That's what I love to do because that's part of me. Now that may have not been the best of examples, but once you get to know your self-identity, you can apply yourself in life to the maximum ability, to the maximum extent. And you can become as much as you are meant to be because you know yourself and where, in turn, to apply yourself to. That's why it's so important to understand your self-identity. Now, when you're seeking your self-identity, okay, you are coming ahead and you are first starting off at the base. The base meaning that who are you, right? What is the easiest, let's say you're 12 years old, because that's when you start discovering a sense of self-identity. I've said before 10 or 12, let's say. At that point, you need to think that, at that point, you need to realize something, that you need to start from the very beginning. In your quest for self-identity, you're not going to start with the advanced things, like, for example, what type of career should I choose? You're going to start at the very, very baseline subjects. How tall am I? Well, obviously, let's say in my case, I'm 5'7". You might say, where in the social, what color is my hair? Establish that. Is it, in my case, is it black or is it brown? What color are my eyes? Who are my parents? What is my family? Who are my friends? These are the very, very basic, fundamental blocks of self-identity. Among these blocks are the subject of gender. What is your gender? If you can say, I am a boy, that is a matter of self-identity. If you can say confidently, I am a girl, that is a matter of self-identity. It is a matter of understanding who you are. Because as a matter of fact, you really are the gender that you were created by the good Lord himself at birth. Now, I'm going to keep God out of this, even though I am religious, but that's not the point of this video. So I'm going to keep God out of this subject. However, what you were created with on a biological level is exactly the gender that you are. So therefore, by going ahead and assuming that you're anything else aside from that gender is in fact a disservice, and you're a disservice to yourself in the form of deconstructing that fundamental block that formulates your self-identity. Because if you don't have that self-identity, especially a block such as big as gender, self-identity is like a pyramid. And if you don't have that lower block, you cannot possibly build up to the higher blocks, such as the self-identity of where you fall in a social hierarchy. You can never figure out where you fall in a social hierarchy if you don't even know if you're a boy or girl. These are the fundamental attributes and aspects of why being gay or choosing to be gay is so detrimental to one's health and ultimately one's life. And that is why it's so important that people don't become gay. Why it's so important to not make the choice of becoming gay. Furthermore, you have a certain situation where you have a society that encourages people to be gay, right? And in turn, if you've heard everything I've said, you'd realize that what they're really doing is they're encouraging people to be weak and to not fulfill everything they can fulfill. Because the only thing that you're trying to do by accumulating a sense of self-identity is accepting yourself and applying it to the world. Well, if you can't do that as best as you can, then you can't apply yourself to it as best as you can. So you have a whole culture and society that's encouraging you that's encouraging you to be a weaker version of yourself, or a less accomplished version of yourself, or a version of yourself that is helpless or needy or unsure or a lacking of identity. There's really not much more fundamentally than that. Now, I can get more on into the subject of yin and yang, and perhaps I will, but rather quickly, and I might cover that in another video. But the bottom line is, everything in this world has an equal and opposite reaction. You have the North Pole and you have the South Pole. You have, on the batteries, you have positive charges and negative charges. Down to the finite atoms, you have electrons and you have protons. This is the fundamental scientific makeup that makes up our very matter. Everything we have and see and hear. Therefore, it is that yin and yang, that darkness and light, which we have darkness and light, the day and night, that comes together to make this world the beautiful place that it is. And when that social balance, that circle of life that is talked about, is disrupted, when you have, say, the men turning into women, so that would be the darkness turning into the light, or the women turning into the men, the light turning into the dark. Because when those things are flipped on their head, there becomes a misbalance in the universe, an unbalanced universe. And once you have an unbalanced universe, you're really, really going to turn a society upside down. And that's really all there is. I hope some of these things have been helpful. I put a lot of brain power into this monologue, and I hope that hopefully it has helped somebody in their quest for who they are, as well as maybe change their mind a little bit on the subject of being gay.